Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Islam Today on Ahl Bayt TV, and today we are going to be talking about an important topic which I know touches everybody's hearts and also frustrates a lot of people because of our sense of powerlessness to do anything about it, which is the destruction of the holy sites in Arabia. What can be done to prevent any further destruction that is going on? Because as we know, that has been showing in the news, there are new plans being made for even further destruction of any site that can remind Muslims of where the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family, prayed, for example, or where he lived, or where he's even buried. So we're honoured tonight to have with us two expert guests in this topic, on this topic, Dr. Irfan Allawi of Islamic Heritage, and also our other guest is Mr. Ali Jafri of Save Muslim Heritage as well. So inshallah, do feel free to call in with any questions or comments or thoughts that you may have about the subject of what we can actually do to prevent any further destruction. So assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you for giving us your time as well for this important topic. Just before we go straight into talking about what's going on, would it be possible, could you just give me a little bit about background of your organisation? And
Yes, Islamic Heritage Research Foundation was set up almost 30 years ago.
right.
With various prominent people in Saudi Arabia or Hijaz, people like Muhammad Abdul Yamani, the Minister of Information, other people who were influential in the government at the time and who passed away and so forth. People like Sayyid Muhammad Ali al-Maliki, the Alim al-Hijaz, famous scholar of Mecca. And it was in particular to protect and preserve the heritage. And those days we realized that a lot of sites are being wiped away deliberately, which attract, according to Saudi Arabia, Wahhabism, shirk, idolatry, and so forth. So this was formed with architects, historians, and academics to try and stop further destruction and demolition throughout the whole of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And of course, alhamdulillah, it is still going strong, although some of them have passed on and retired. And we've sort of moved on, not particularly we are concerned about Hijaz, but we have moved on to different countries, like for example Egypt and Iraq.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that gives us rise to a question of is Egypt and Iraq also in danger? But also, Ali Jafri, if you could give a little background as well about Save Muslim Heritage.
Yes, Save Muslim Heritage. We're a group of like these passionate individuals who started roughly about 2 years ago, started talking about it. And every year, 8th of Shawwal used to remind us of Jannatul Baqi.
Yeah.
And about 5 months ago, when the grave of Hazrat Hujr bin Adi was destructed, and they got as far as exhuming the body and all those images we saw, the damaging images. After that, we thought like really something needs to be done about it. And Save Muslim Heritage is more on a grassroots level, where we aim at individuals of actions they can take on a local, national level, and use the existing system of the society where we live in, the democratic system, to raise our voices and put pressure on the government, via our UK government, basically, that the Muslims in this country are concerned about their heritage sites, and something needs to be done about it. So obviously it's a campaign, and we've got multiple ways of raising awareness, which I'll touch on when we current. Yeah.
Inshallah, thank you. Another question I was going to ask is, what are the challenges, Dr. Allawi? What have been the challenges about highlighting this? I mean, have you, obviously, in highlighting what's going on, you're going directly against the will of some quite influential people in certain countries. So has it been, I mean, in some ways, when someone steps out into public to try to do something, you can often find yourself sandwiched in the middle of a lot of conflicting, forces. There's people who want you to go out there and, raise the topic in a very, let's say, explicit way, loudly bang the drum. And then you've also got to deal with people within that country. You've got to understand diplomacy. You've got to keep the channels of communication open. So how do you manage that?
Yes, of course, it has been a challenge. certainly over the past 15 years, I would say, whereas we've lost the most important sites in Mecca. It is, as you say, the influence of petrodollars. I have been writing and I've been presenting my lectures with PowerPoints of before this demolition started in Mecca, as we see now over the past 5-10 years. We've had people who've approached me, myself particularly in the organization, and say, well, there is a need to expand Mecca or Medina. But at the same time, we've had people who realized that this is going too far, and they've come forward and said, well, look, is there anything that we can do to help you?
Right.
We're living in the kingdom, especially in Mecca. I've seen the streets and hallways and the alleyways that we used to walk through, going back to Abbasi period and Ottoman period, and I've taken people who visited me in Mecca to these historical areas. They were actually really shocked when they went back after 5 years that they have been totally razed.
Gosh.
So the challenges have always been there, but I'm a person who likes challenges, and this, I don't call it a campaign, I call it an amana, a responsibility for the whole ummah.
Right.
This is not Dr. Al-Alawi's responsibility to protect the sites, the Kaaba or Masjid al-Nabawi or anything which belongs to the Ahlul Bayt or the companions, belongs to the whole ummah. And certainly where the Saudi regime is controlling it by emotional blackmail, I think that should stop.
Right.
I am not calling for the changing of the king or the changing of the monarchy. All I'm asking for, that let's have a systematic development, not a systematic cultural vandalism and demolition.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've got some images of what's actually going on in Mecca that Dr. Alawi has brought in, so hopefully we can see these.
The aerial view, as you will see now, is of Mecca. This is sort of one of the oldest areas. It's called Shaybi Ali, Bani Hashim.
Okay.
And this is the area where the house of Khadija used to be at one time before it was changed into, of course, 1,400 bathrooms which sit on this location today. Would you believe it? And then, of course, we have an area which is right opposite this particular house of Batul Khatija, is the house of Maktaba Makkah al-Mukarramah, the library, which sits on the very location where Sayyidah Amina gave birth to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The idea here is that this library is under threat, and it's been up there for almost half a century. 1951, it was built with a library on top, so nobody will carry excavations of this. Since then, people visit this area to take blessings from the wall and so forth. It really, to Saudis, it doesn't contain any essence of reality that this is that particular area. We know for a fact when we carried the house excavations of Khadija, we know this, the same thing. If we carry out excavations, we will find the relics belonging to Amina or that era. To Saudis, they have big billboards painted out with digital displays in several languages which say this is shirk. You should not come here. This is not a proven place where the Prophet ﷺ was born. But again, we have plans from the Abbasi and the Ottoman period. We have even photographs to prove that this location had a white dome over it. And of course, it is the last historical site. Not that the others are not. We have about 20 which are remaining, but this is the most important site in the kingdom which is under threat of demolition.
And I think we have another image coming up.
Yes, this is the, we have what we call the presidential palace. And it's the presidential palace which is going to overlook this area if this plan goes ahead with the Saudi regime. They thought that they will want to sort of replace this into underground car park by demolishing the old library, or before that a whole railway tram system which is a stop. But of course that was scrapped. And now this ugly plan is to replace it with the presidential palace and the residence of the Imam, which of course it's not acceptable.
Yes. We just had another image of a plaque. So this is the plan.
This is the plan of the, which attracts shirk to them, of course. This is no way the house of the Prophet where he was born. There's no proof. So dear Haji or pilgrim, do not attempt to come and visit this place, or don't kiss the walls and so forth, which is fine. I mean, we don't want to go that far to kiss the walls because this is not the actual house. But the argument is that it sits over that particular house where Amina gave birth to the Prophet.
Yeah.
And of course, the Saudis argue again, like they did with the house of Khadija, that was not the house. But when we discovered it, we found that all the rooms were there. We carried the excavations, we found the room of the revelations, and we found the room where Fatima was born.
Wow.
So again, you know, it was taken down, and the toilets sit over that particular area today.
I wonder why they've chosen specifically, you know, toilets to put over there. It's almost like, you know, not only are they going to decide to destroy it, but they're also just going to have an extra statement on there, which is, you know, this is how much contempt we have for, you know, any idea that this is worth.
I think certainly with the particular family of the Prophet, yes, they do have this ideology that Muslims pray to the Prophet or his family, and I think it's the sickness of the heart. But in actual fact, we have to realize that we learn by our history, and if we don't protect our heritage, that becomes a legend.
And Ali Jafri, I mean, you started seeing these images as well. You started off, obviously, this was the destruction of the shrine of Hujr ibn Adi. Have you also got involved with what's going on in Arabia? Have you started?
Yes, yes. We the objectives of the campaign is to raise awareness against destruction of any Muslim heritage sites. And just to explain that a bit, I mean, these heritage sites and are these references to history that we have, and our objective is to work at the grassroots level, which means that the Muslims who are sort of seeing these things in the news and reading about them, they need to feel that if nothing is done about it now, there's very few of them remaining, basically. So you know, and the spiritual experience that the existing Muslims they go on and have over there, they would just miss all that out. They would just go and have a big piece of land to visit. So you know, it's basically like, you know, Syria. There are recent heritage destructions, but Saudi one's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And, just in March, when this incident happened, you know, we've started our petition basically at change.org. And just to give awareness to everyone at like, again, at the social media level, at the youth level, at community level, so that they understand exactly what's happening, giving them these detailed news, and to get in touch with it, and also the actions of what they can do to do something about it, basically.
Yeah.
So
this is the big question, because also, you know, you see this in the news, you see, you know, this going on. And yet, you know, you think to yourself, what can I do? Especially lately, you know, with the massive destruction or reconstruction that's going on. And I think a lot of people have seen those photos in the news of the cranes and, you know, in the Haram area and everything. And you just look at it and you think, what on earth can I do? I could just, you know, and then people say, but the Muslims don't care, they're not, you know, speaking out, or they're not doing something about it. But at the same time, you think, well, what can I do? You know, often you don't do something because you're at a loss as to what you can do. Dr. Ali.
Well, I mean, from what my experience tells me, that Saudi Arabia hates bad publicity. And from last year, of course, they were going to demolish part of Masjid al-Nabawi, or rather Jannah, which is the mihrab of the Prophet ﷺ when he was born. And of course, I released a report arguing the point that certainly the angel is not going to come back and reveal another verse to the Prophet to face the Qibla. So this particular mihrab was built there by the indication of Jibreel alayhi salam.
Right.
The argument was, of course, they would accommodate another 5-6 prayer mats during the peak season. So anyone who prays near the mihrab of the Prophet is committing shirk and bid'ah. However, the danger was also that I was concerned about, like they have visiting times for the sisters to visit the Roza Sharif or the Hujra Mubarak. I was quite sort of fearful that they will probably allocate the same times of the brothers. And wherefore, that if this was to expand, perhaps 5 times the expansion of King Fahad's expansion, we will probably have times implemented by the Saudi regime to say, well, the brothers can only visit the Prophets at certain times. So my fear was not only the expansion, but visiting the Prophet as well. And at the same time, when I released this report, it was picked up by, again, the Independent I usually contribute my articles to.
Okay.
And that immediately shook the Saudi government.
Okay.
And of course, I had a call from Saudi Arabian Municipality Department. King Abdullah was called for by some clerics who asked him to reverse the decision because it's caused an outrage in the Muslim world. And I was quite surprised. But of course, King Abdullah is the last person to know when sites are demolished.
Okay.
He's never
Really?
aware of this.
Oh.
So they go and demolish them or dynamite them before the king is aware of this.
Right, okay.
And of course, as soon as he was made aware of this, he reversed the decision. Today we have the expansion of Masjid Nabi going for Bab al-Majidi side, which is fine because Masjid Ali, Masjid al-Ghamama, Masjid Abu Bakr, they're all intact.
Right.
And they should be intact. So my aim here is to protect and preserve. And by experts that we work with in Mecca, myself, we've realized, look, in 1998, we had the bulldozing of grave of Sayyidah Amina. Not all bulldozed the grave of Sayyidah Amina in Abwa, which is in the 5 hours in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere from Medina. They poured kerosene over it to burn it.
God.
So then they dug a ditch around it so the pilgrims don't have access to that particular area. The petition started from there on. And they continued for plus 20 years, but nothing was achieved.
Yeah.
The thing is, we have to remember with the Saudi regime is they have the oil, which is black gold.
Yeah.
And of course, they use emotional blackmail. So we can protest, and I'm sure that you know that a lot of Shia community has been protesting for years on Jannatul Baqi and Mu'alla in Washington, in London. But petitions and demonstrations don't work. The way to go around this, which we've learned is to expose them.
Okay.
But expose them in an academic way.
Yeah.
Use the channels, use newspapers, and at the same time lobby your ministers wherever you may be in the world.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a good point. That's a good tip to lobby the ministers, which or local MPs, I guess, and if they don't respond, to write to them again. I suppose. I mean, again, that's the thing of like, I'm not an experienced in lobbying. So how do you lobby?
Yeah, that's. I think we're working on that quite a lot in the last about 4 months or so.
Yeah.
Just to carry on from the point, I think the line that we're taking on for the people is that to realize that Saudi don't own these sites.
Yeah.
And they can't just make decisions if they feel that this is right and just do it, because these sites are basically related to the whole Muslim Ummah.
Yeah.
As such. And also the public pressure is the only thing that can help do something about it. So with in terms of the action plan, we have this we have a set of documents which are available on our website. But it starts with a letter of concern, which at the local community level, it's got all the facts and figures in it, what's happened, and you get more and more people to sign it, and that could be done in your sort of local centers or in local groups that you're working with. So yeah, and then it goes on to actual a letter to your MP, and the process of all the way up to the FCO, basically.
Thank you. Thank you, and we'll continue our discussion after the break. You're watching Islam Today. What can we do about the destruction of the holy sites? Inshallah, we'll see you again in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Islam Today, where we're talking about what we can do about the destruction of the holy sites in the Muslim world. Do feel free to call in with any suggestions or questions or comments or experiences as well that you may have had about how things have changed in the Holy Lands, what you may have seen over the years. So we also have some more images to show. So we will, inshallah, continue to show these pictures to give us an idea of what's going on.
I would like to show the oldest area of Mecca, which is Bani Hashim area.
Right.
This is the area which contains the most important historical sites, of course, the Bayt al-Khatija, the house of Khatija, which used to be at one time the library which stands the birthplace of the Prophet Muhammad, the house of Sayyidina Ali. This area, of course, today, as you can see from the map, It gives you the numbers. Number 1 is the Kaaba, the center point, of course, and then number 2 would be the king's current palace.
Okay.
Number 3 is Babu Salam, which should have been there, of course, which has been erased now. You don't know which way is the Babu Salam entrance, which the Prophet used to enter Masjid al-Haram.
Oh gosh.
Number 4 is the birthplace of the Prophet, which is the library.
Wow.
And 5 is the location of Khadija's house where Fatima was born. Then the revelations came to the Prophet after the mountain of light.
Right.
And then number 7, the most ancient part of Makkah, is the Bani Hashim area, which is sort of, it contained a lot of the Hashemite, the family of the Prophet, and his father and mother used to live in that area. Today, it's all been erased to make way of the expansion of Makkah at the cost of historical Makkah.
I mean, this is another question, and also Ali Jafri, I don't know if you're coming up against this, but yeah, this is the argument that, well, we need to expand because, I mean, people know that when they're applying to go on Hajj, that there are restrictions on how many people can go because they're saying they don't have the facilities, they don't have the space. We have stories of people being crushed, and you know. Is it necessary for these sites to be bulldozed in order to sort of update and cater? It seems that what they've got is this image of a sort of you know, in their mind, we could argue, although we know there are other reasons behind it, but we could argue that they're looking at it and saying, well, Mecca is a little bit old-fashioned, it's kind of behind the times, we want to have a kind of a slick, modern, new, you know, Saudi Arabia. And to do that, we need to kind of just break everything down and expand it and make it all fantastic, you know. So,
well, yes, I mean, one can argue, yes, there is a need of expansion.
Yeah.
We have never denied the need of expansion. Let's go 5 years back. The Mataf area, of course, every hour you have about between 72 to 75,000 people performing the tawaf,
right.
The circumambulation of the Kaaba. What the Saudis want to do now, after this current expansion, want to accommodate 140,000 people per hour. And of course, recently I've done a piece for Al-Akhbar on a Lebanese newspaper, where the OIC was contacted. That what do they consider, because of course be able to protect these sites as an organization in the Middle East. Well, the excuse was, of course, that some of these sites, for example, the library or other sites which they claim to be derelict and are dangerous to the pilgrims, i.e. they can collapse. Well, I find that very disturbing. How on earth is the mountain of light or Jabal al-Thawr going to collapse on the pilgrims, or the mountain of Uhud? It is intent which they want to do is to demolish and block these sites because it leads what they believe idolatry or shirk.
Yeah.
There is a way of course, accommodating Hajj and pilgrims in Ramadan, and of course, if you move away a mile and a half from the Masjid al-Haram, there's vast amount of desert. You can build whatever you like there. But when we realize that Mecca, or what we see now, Las Vegas as I see it now, with laser lights springing out from the clock tower, is the most expensive plot of land on earth. So that accumulates a lot of wealth.
Right.
Not only for the Saudi regime, but this is timeshares, Waqf King Abdulaziz, which means that for 24 years, a non-Muslim can buy apartments and lease them, whoever may be outside the kingdom.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it seems so overwhelming as well. I just want to bring Ali Jafri in again with what you've done so far, because your organisation is quite new. Yeah. How have you, what are your experiences in you know, in the last couple of years since this was set up? How have you addressed some of these issues?
Yes, I think the first question when we speak to people that comes up is these number of visitors, that the number of visitors are increasing every year. And what we've kind of realized, and you know, following on from Dr. Allawi, is the majority of these visitors are in the Hajj or the Ramadan time, and then it sort of evens out during the different months. And the common thinking that comes you know, across to resolve this is through the visa process. If there can be a control put on it, that you know, there are people who are performing Hajj every year, and some people don't get to perform Hajj every year, and they're like systems where ballots are in place and all sorts of things. So if there can be a limitation of the number of people that are attending, because it's only obligatory one time in the whole life. So through the visa process, we can limit those numbers. One way to do it. The other one is about renovating these sites. Of course, there is a requirement of modernization, because over age, these buildings can get for different reasons not useful.
Yeah.
But plan the renovation around the historical sites. So leave them as it is, and modernize everything that's around, making space for visitors. And also crowd control measures. There are events around the world that happen, and there are like crowd control systems in place to do that. The other very good example that we give is Arbaeen in Karbala.
Yeah.
We're talking about 20 million people, I've been there in December only, and there was literally just heads and heads around. And every site, I think that was present in the 60th Hijri, is there.
Yeah.
So if there is a possibility of preserving sites with increasing crowds, it's just if you have that intention, basically, and if you want to preserve them, and then there can be ways around it. People are visiting those places to see the sites, to have the spiritual experience. If they go there and it's a big piece of land, then you think about London. Remove the historical sites. People come to London because of the things in it, rather than London itself.
Yeah.
So those sites make up Makkah, basically.
Are you again sort of making these suggestions? Have you put these suggestions, say, to the monarchy or?
Yes. So we, like I said, because we're working at a UK level.
Yeah.
We're here. The highest international one we've gone to is UNESCO.
Okay.
Where they have a heritage control program, and I think most of the sites in Saudi are on the heritage list as well. So at the MP level, and I know lots of brothers and sisters who have gone to their local MP and just given them, without a religious view of it, of old sites that we in this country, that we preserve some of very, very thousands of years old buildings. So giving it a religious aspect and a historical aspect, and going to them, and they do understand. Up to now, we didn't have any sort of MP saying that no, this is not something you need to worry about. It's a Saudi's problem, and they'll just do whatever. They understand the people's concerns, and the idea is like when this voice goes more and more forward, it gets discussed, and then something can be done at the higher government level to put the pressure on the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we've
Can
got...
we go for another picture?
Sure. Yes, I was going to say another picture.
The next picture we're showing is the Zamzam Towers, which of course is a huge replica of the Empire State Building, and is it a
replica? Is that what it's meant to be?
Well, yes, of course, and of course not the same size, but this is the plan of the expansion of the Haram as it will look hopefully by next year. This is what they're hoping. My theory is that, of course, it's going to be huge. This sort of area, again, it will come into contact with the different areas like Shubaika, the cemetery, where before the Jahiliyyah period the girls used to be buried. The cemetery still is there. A lot of few people know that. But coming to the point which I want to mention is the next, which is the presidential palace. The next photograph that you see now is the plans. Now, if you look at the presidential palace, it's Jannatul Mala. It's a Jannatul Mala. Now, if you can see the Jannatul Mala, this is the very old and ancient image, which shows the grave of Khatija and Qasim, and of course Abdul Muttalib and the ancestors of the Prophet. This was, of course, demolished before 1924. And if you see the next picture, which as it looks today, without the domes, it has been wiped away. If you look at UNESCO report, for example, you have 3 sites which are listed under UNESCO in the kingdom. And would you believe it, that none of them are related to the Prophet or Islam? One is Adarriya, which is the King Abdulaziz fort when he conquered Saudi Arabia. Number 2, it is the Madina Saleh, which is the historical mountains. And then, of course, old houses which are in Jeddah. But you don't have anything under UNESCO to protect the heritage of Islam.
So is this what you're working on, Ali, to try to get them to recognise these sites? Is it likely? I mean, how come they haven't?
Well, there has been people who approached UNESCO and World Heritage as well, which is another organization.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia says, well, an individual or organizations cannot bully us into accepting heritage. We as a country have every right what we consider is heritage and so forth. But if you go to Medina, you go to Well of Salman Farsi, for example, you will have billboards or signs posted, and they have a serial number there saying that it's a protected municipality site. But on the other hand, that is just to shut the pilgrims up. In actual fact, they're not protecting those sites. Those sites are being slowly and gradually being demolished. And of course, because they're very derelict, bearing in mind 1500 years now, they're not going to stand all intact. So the idea here is that the only way to pressurize UNESCO is when the Muslim world pressurizes Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
As an individual or an organization, there's no chance against Saudi Arabia.
So do you think there's any chance if you're writing to UNESCO?
That's what we're sort of aiming at, and the idea is to get more and more people involved in this campaign. And one of our other objectives is to not to make it a Shia problem, but unite all the other sects to work towards the same goal, because it's it's concerning everyone, and these are the type of things we can actually sort of unite on as well. To carry on with this objective, recently we've have had a TV program with the Sunni channel as well, where there were different Sunni sects and our people, and they all it was very, very reassuring to see that program where everyone was talking about the same goal, that yes, this is a problem, and we're now planning a joint procession with them, so which would show that it's not just a single sex problem, but the Prophet is here for the world. And even moving forward with that, some interfaith groups that we're talking to, they realize that, and they say like, why is Saudi doing this to your sites? And because we've got all these thousands of years old buildings and we protect them and all that. So to create that awareness, get all those people involved, get to the MP, and again, like going to the government, they need to feel that there are lots of people frustrated by the actions of the Saudi, and something needs to be done about it, because the only way they think was with their answer of not putting the heritage sites on. They're clearly saying that we own this area, we can demolish it, we can create apartments on it, we can do whatever we want.
Have you actually got anywhere with it, UNESCO up to now? Have they responded? Or?
No, we have to get to a certain point, getting a number of signatures and getting a number of people involved and the MPs involved to be able to pass to UNESCO. You can't go them like with an email as such. That is the case. So that's where we're trying to get in with the Ahl Sunnah on board, and with our community on board. All of them together, we're hoping that we'll get to that point very soon, inshallah. That something proper can be filed, and based on the idea, if they don't accept it, then the reasons that are given, that those are the ones which we will work on and get to the point that they can be listed at heritage sites, because then we'll have another pressure on the Saudi, not from the governments but from a world organization saying that heritage needs to be protected.
Do you think, Dr. Allawi, do you think there's a chance of this? You just said that how Saudi Arabia feels no one's going to bully us.
No.
Right.
If you want my honest truth, I think it's the end of Mecca. I said this 5 years ago when I wrote my first article, and I wanted Muslims to react then. As a matter of fact, I said this 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, you've been saying it for a long time. I'm aware of your name.
They say the Amina's grave. Another time, not only the Shias, but many Sunni ulama did come on board. And this was related to one of my good teachers, the ex-minister of Kuwait, Sayyid Yusuf Hashim al-Rafai, who started the campaign, and he wrote a very famous book, Nasiha Ulama al-Ikhwan, a warning to the brothers of Najd. Right. For what the atrocities they were doing.
I think that's quite. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yes. So at that time we started everything, and some of the ulama did come on board with the aims of protection and preservation. But again, the Muslims, as you know, they start something as an emotion, and then becomes they go back to sleep again. And it was not continuously fighting strategy. So therefore, I think if there is any chance, then the chance should be under King Abdullah. Okay. Because he has regardless if we like it or not, he has made a lot of good changes. For example, the Masjid Nabawi is open 24 hours, which
Okay.
gives a benefit to the sisters to use as well, to visit the Prophet and so forth. And to allow Mawlid al-Nabi to be celebrated on private premises without the mutawwa
Right.
or harassing.
Okay, well, we just got a caller on the line, so we'll just take this call and see what our callers have to say. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for calling in.
Yes, my name is Asad, and I wanted to raise this issue slightly differently, if that's okay,
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Sure.
The thing is, I mean, the people from Iran and say Bangladesh and India, and perhaps some other countries, we tend to have a more reverential view of the tradition of peers, or going to buildings, if you like, where people are buried.
Yeah.
We tend to have a more devotional view of these things. I know from the Indian and Bangladesh and Iranian point of view, this is quite important. On the other hand, if you like, the more practical issue, which concerns the number of pilgrims
Yeah.
going for Hajj.
Yeah.
And in fact, going to Mecca and Medina, I think this is going to be increased dramatically, I gather, in the next 20, 30 decades, in the next rather 3-4 decades, that up to 100 million Muslims will be going to Hijaz
Right.
for pilgrimage purposes. Now that means, in fact, that this area will become economically very important to Saudis.
Yeah.
In fact, even more so than oil. Oil probably will become less important. And they're probably planning for that. So I think, we Muslims have to be aware that, I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Saudis, but I mean, frankly, they're actually savages when it comes to considering cultural value of these
Yeah.
things. But of course, as I say, I mean, we need to be aware that pragmatically speaking, if Muslims are going to be using, rather remembering Hajj and going to these places for pilgrimage purposes, we need to be pragmatically aware that we need more space, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think we need to be aware that yes, sentiment is one thing. The other is that the value of these places for Muslims worldwide, because they will. I mean, we're becoming increasingly wealthy. The world, rather. We're also becoming more mobile.
Right.
So I think we will need to have Mecca and Medina more accessible to all of us.
Right.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you for your points. We've just got a few. Thank you for calling in, and this was touching a little bit earlier on something we were talking about. We just got a few minutes before we go to break, but we did touch on this. The sort of, are Muslims sentimental, and and is it sort of like is it just a sort of cultural sentimentality that Muslims like burial places, and actually. It's necessary for this to be done because of these huge, amazing plans that are in place.
Well, I mean, there is a famous hadith of the Prophet says, "La tahdimu ala atama fi innahu zinatul Madina." Do not raise the vestiges of Medina for they are the beauty of Medina.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the word of the Prophet. And of course, during the Abbasi period or the Ottoman period, you had all the beautiful architecture there. You can go back to Egypt, you can go Cairo, Al-Azhar,
Yeah.
you can go Baghdad. The beautiful architecture is still preserved. We have experts, but the idea here in Saudi Arabia is modernization. They like ugly, white, plain marble buildings. And like the brother said just now, should we be thinking of controlling the quota system for pilgrims? I think we have to realize the Saudis will continue expanding. As a matter of fact, they've put 7 million tents up in Arafat and Mina to accommodate 7 million pilgrims gradually. But this is, like I said from the start, is an amana of the ummah. Before they continue expanding, we should stop the demolition first. We should have preservation orders on the historical sites. And then let's think of the expansion. I mean, certainly 100 million is an exaggeration. I mean, but we're certainly looking at about 15 million pilgrims, the next few years' time. And there's a way of developing that. Certainly, I'm not objecting. We have experts there, and we have a navigation system which we've devised from Jeddah and all the way from Mecca to Medina, which is so sophisticated, gives us the hijrah route of the Prophet.
Right.
So we actually have everything preserved in blueprint, in maps, in photographs. Our library contains about 55,000 photographs. Some of the photographs have never been accessed by the general public before. If there were, there would be an outrage. For example, do people know that the Kaaba was taken down? There was no Kaaba some few years ago.
Okay, we didn't know that. And well, inshallah, we'll continue with there's lots of things that we don't know, actually, we're completely unaware of. So we are about to go to break. Inshallah, we will see you in a few minutes to continue this discussion. We look forward to your calls as well. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Islam Today, and we're talking about the destruction of the holy sites and what we can do about them. And actually what I've been learning from this conversation is also just how we could educate ourselves a little bit more about what is actually there, because I think probably many people have quite a vague idea of what's there. You've mentioned some sites that many people haven't heard of, so a lot of this destruction that's going on, people aren't aware because they don't even know what's there to start off with.
I mean, if you go to our next picture, which is the old Kaaba, right. This is the Ottoman era, so the 1800s, and you had the four masallas, the four praying areas of the four imams there, the Orthodox school of thought. And of course, you can show the area is very ancient, and none of the buildings around it outside are actually taller than the minarets of the Kaaba. This is the adab, or the respect of the haram. And the next picture that you see, which is a very recent picture of the demolition which is taking place now. You have the caterpillars, and you believe me, they have the largest caterpillar machines in the world they've ordered, and the largest cranes overlooking the Kaaba. And this is penetrating the earth's crust, which has, believe it or not, disturbed the Zamzam. And my report came out last year that they found traces of arsenic in Zamzam.
Oh my God.
Of course, we don't have the time to show the images there.
Yeah.
But yes, the Zamzam well has been sort of damaged. I want to show you something very shocking. The next image that we have is the holy shrine of Imam Ali Uraid ibn Jafr al-Sadiq, the grandson of the Prophet. It was about 3 miles from Masjid al-Nabawi. And it was under the Ottomans. And it was, yes, a shrine which contained Al-Uraid and his son. And they simply would not allow people to visit this area because it Shias or Sunnis or Sufis, because it attracts shirk. So one day what they did, they came and bulldozed the mosque and then just blockade the mosque. However, people still could go and visit that. And that irritated them. And one day they came again, and this image you see, they dynamited the whole of the grave and the mosque, and it's become history. And as you see today, it's under rubble, which is the next image.
We should have this image up soon of this mosque. This is
this is as it is in rubble.
SubhanAllah.
So coming to the points or the places which are under threat and of course still exist, one is the Bir Tuwa, which the Prophet ﷺ actually drank water from. It's about 2 miles away or 2.5 miles away from Masjid al-Haram. It's very derelict. It's in the middle of rubble. It's still producing water. It's under threat of being demolished. One. In Medina, you have the 5 remaining mosques, the Battle of the Trench of Fatah Khandak. Because of the irritation that sometimes they feel that by petitioning, they feel that this just irritates them. So what they get annoyed, they go and shackle them with chains. They've been shackled with chains. I know the Masjid Fatima, Masjid Ali has always been shut down. So the other mosques have been shut down now, and the new mosque has already been built there for several years. So what is going to eventually happen is going to knock these mosques down. So we would have to pray in the new mosque, which does not have any significance with the Prophet, because none of the companions of the family of the Prophet had prayed there. So these are some places which are still existent. And those others are, of course, under threat.
Yeah, because I found a picture of the Masjid Salman al-Farsi, for example, and it's very modest, very modest, humble. But yeah, the thing that did occur to me when I found the image is like, what's happening to it? What's going to happen to it? I mean, again, as you're saying, petitions irritate them, and this is how they respond. What can we do in response to that? If
Well, one of the reasons which I was approached by one of the TV channels last week, and I didn't go on. The reason being because we need to have people who know the strategy, who are academic, who know the groundwork, and then we, like Brother Jafri said, we have to lobby the government.
yeah,
To lobby the government, you can't become emotional. Look, if I'll give an example. If a brick is removed in Jerusalem, the
Yeah.
whole Muslim world reacts,
Yeah.
becomes in protest. But that happens because it happens in a non-Muslim country, although it should be Muslim, but it's
Yeah.
not. But this is happening under the House Al Saud, and who could call themselves the custodians of the Haramain Sharifain. So the way to do this is, the elections are coming up in the UK, aren't they?
yeah,
So aren't we supposed to put pressure on our MPs? Well, look, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. I need not only Islamic heritage restored in the kingdom, but non-Islamic as well, because the Prophet respected every
Yeah.
historical site.
Yeah.
This is our Prophet. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ, is a mercy to mankind.
right. Yeah. So again, just to reiterate the warning to our viewers that was given earlier, Zamzam at the moment has arsenic in it. So for anyone who's planning to go on Umrah or buy some bottles of Zamzam water, we'll probably warn our viewers not to drink that, as it's now been very cleverly poisoned by the authorities over there. And yeah, and another thing, as we were saying, to again address our local MPs with this issue. I mean, easier said than done as well, because often you can write to your MP. I don't get. I wrote to my MP about something and I didn't get a reply. So I suppose you have to be persistent and just keep sending the same letter.
Well, I've actually done a presentation on this in the House of Lords, believe it
Okay.
or not naming the Lord, but he asked me, are these real pictures? And I said, well, in English they say a picture speaks 1,000 words.
Yeah.
But of course, a lot of Shia people covered the program, a lot of Sunnis did, and we have to work towards it.
Yeah.
We know that we don't get replies back, but look, there is a way, and if we're strong enough, then we have to work towards it, and when there's a will, there's a way.
Okay. Well, that's good news. Although I think I remember seeing your article or report a few years ago, and you were saying something like 95% of the holy sites have been.
I think much more than that now.
Right. I mean, what do we have left to preserve? I mean,
Well, we have only the Kaaba and Masjid al-Nabawi.
right.
And of course, as you know, the fatwa of bin Baz has been going on for a number of years, and Hadi bin Wadi, who wrote that fatwa, who was given a distinction in his PhD in Medina Munawwara University, who calls for the demolition and removal of the Green Dome, Qubba Khadra, and flattening the three graves of Sayyidina
Right.
Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Abu Bakr, Umar, to flatten them because this contains shirk. And they said, you know, they're waiting for that time. So the idea, again, coming back to the same point, in 2006 the Kaaba was removed. And are we waiting for them to remove the Green Dome and flatten the three graves? That's the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. And I know the residents of Medina are not too happy about that either. I heard that the dome, they wanted to paint it silver or something.
They did,
and,
yes.
yeah,
and they reacted and they said, well, Green Dome has always been appealing to them. How dare they?
Yeah,
they
they actually
reacted.
won the argument in that
Yes,
one.
they did.
It's an ongoing battle.
Alhamdulillah.
So Ali Jafri, you've got a conference coming up?
Yes, that's part of our awareness program. We did
Yeah.
one last year in London, and the next one is on the 21st of March in Birmingham.
Okay.
It's at the Birmingham University, and we've got a Sunni speaker in it, a Christian father in it, and one of our scholars, Shia scholar in it as well. And again, the focus would be on preserving Islamic heritage
Yeah.
from all perspectives, from the representative of all these communities. I think just touching on the point of the importance of these holy sites, these are the places, it's a tomb, but there's someone in that tomb as well, and these were the people like chosen by God. So if
Yeah.
you suddenly make that link where you're standing close to a place where there's a person, and that person was what is special, and what the spiritual experience that brings in, and not praying to that person. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the wasila that we're talking about. So the idea of our campaign is to create irritation. Is to
Right.
create noise. It is to create an effect, a ripple effect, and have everyone thinking about something. Muslims are sleeping. We have to,
Yeah.
unfortunately, say that fact. And they have to wake up. There have been instances in the past where when the movies about the Prophet was released, and there were there were processions, and there were actions taken, and it was taken down off YouTube. It came back again, like in different formats, sort of thing. But Muslims uniting together, not just Shia Muslims or Sunni Muslims, all the Muslims in the world uniting together in the name of the Prophet and in the name of God have made a difference in the past. So we'll continue these actions, and again, you just have to try on these things, whether it has an effect. You have your duty. You're not living in those eras where you can actually work with these holy people. So while they're not here with us, between us, it's our responsibility to preserve anything that is related to them, all the way until our Imam rise.
Thank you. I mean, this is another issue. Of course, the issue of aqeedah, and this issue of as you're talking about shirk, bid'ah, as we know, these very sort of famous terms that get overused, and the fact that how do you go about arguing for the preservation of these sites as well, if they are arguing that preserving them is encouraging shirk and bid'ah, and that you've talked about wasila and you're talking about spiritual experience, but that's going to be a difficult argument to present to these, but they just dismiss it. What are you talking about? You and your I mean, can you present that?
It's interesting you say that, because and this was sort of my understanding as such, that this would be really hard. But there was this TV program that happened. It was a 3-hour-long program, and they had Sunni scholars in it. And what came out of that program, it's not all the people in the Sunni sects who have this particular belief, which is that you are actually praying to a dead person, and the dead person would do something, something like that. So those people were all together in the name of the Prophet, and they said anything related to the Prophet, in terms of a site, a place, anything that we found, think we have to preserve it, because that belongs to our holy Prophet, and he's done so many things for us. We are his ummah, and it's our duty. So even Sunnis, a majority of them, I would say, and the procession, inshallah, will show that there is a unity between all these sects.
The main schools actually also, have the doctrine of tawassul as well, and there are narrations. There are so many narrations anyway. I mean, Dr. Allawi, is it possible to? I mean, this is the thing which I think probably people are finding difficult worldwide. Is even I had an argument. I didn't want it to be an argument, but I was introduced to somebody, about a week ago from a different school of thought, and he was exactly saying that he wasn't Wahhabi, but he was mocking this idea of wasila, and saying, exactly that, saying, you ask dead people for forgiveness, and it's at the heart of it is this kind of ideological difference and understanding. Is that possible to tackle? It seems quite difficult.
I think it's very difficult to change their minds, some of them, and of course the verses of the Quran are very, very clear on that. That first and foremost, that you don't call any prophet dead, because the soil has become haram for them to decompose the bodies of the prophets. And of course the awliya Allah, Allah said, La Allah inna awliya Allah la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. These verses of the Quran, of course, they misinterpreted the way they want to. The way to tackle this, for them to stop further demolition or saying that we are committing atrocities or shirk, there is a way which means, of course, let's preserve the heritage. Let's have an education system implanted. Let that have the training of the matawas, and let them be taught that we are not doing sujood, prostration to any brick or mortar, or to Prophet Muhammad, or any one of his family. On the other hand, if they accuse of committing shirk, then I would say that why is it that they carry big portrait photographs at the great matars, at the airports? They have portraits of their founders. And yet if we have anything belonging to the Prophet or his family, that automatically accuses of being shirk or mushriks. So I think this is a hypocrisy here. But at the same time, yes, I think it's important. Education is a key important issue here, that they need to be taught of how to have public relations with pilgrims, which they are simply very poor in.
Very famously very poor in as well. We've got another caller on the line, which we're going to take. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you. I have a question for Dr. Allawi.
Sure. Go ahead.
My question is that I'm just watching the show and I've noticed some of the points that you've been making. And my question is that do you suggest that only an education system or only academia or only people in that field are people who can make a difference? Or is it something that belongs to the grassroots? Because the heritage belongs to each and every one of us. And each and every one of us, it doesn't belong to a country, it doesn't belong to a person, it doesn't belong to a kingdom. It belongs to each and every one of us. It doesn't belong to an academia or anyone of that sort. So my question is that it seems to be that, 5% is left and etc. But are we the ones to make a difference? Should we be making a difference? Or are you just simply suggesting that, we wait and just see what happens?
Okay.
And also that people such as UNESCO, people within our own community are working towards this improving, preserving our heritage or protesting against the destruction. So what's your opinions on that? And do you think that we should be going down those avenues? Because the point is that we can't just wait for that remaining 5% to be destroyed before we realise it's too late. And each and every one of us does have a responsibility.
Okay.
I'd like your thoughts on that, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, so you were saying it needs to be we need to address things in a,
Yes, what I mean is that when we do programs or we do something, we need to have people who are educated in the field rather than become emotional. And by being emotional, what did we achieve with the act of Salman Rushdie? We just made him a millionaire out of something.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is that petitions, certainly in my books and the experts that we have in the Hijaz, they oppose them. They say don't work because it irritates the Saudis.
Okay.
One of the reasons I say that too is that we've had that sort of feeling. We've seen it with our own eyes. The way to approach it is that anybody can do their work. I'm saying this at Amana, for which I said from the start. You may be uneducated, but that doesn't mean that you can't lobby your MP.
Yeah.
You can't pressurize your MP, your minister, whatever it may be, your Lord Mayor, for example. But the point I'm trying to say is that when it gets to a middle class level, or at least the top level, it should be taken over by the academia level.
Right.
Because when we become emotional, the Saudis will say, okay, fine, do what you like. We will demolish what you're going to do them. There is no way you can take Saudi Arabia down or enforce anything in Saudi Arabia. Even like Brother Jafar has said, you can't go to UNESCO and say, well, look, you have to accept it. They'd say, well, let's see if Saudi Arabia accepts it or not. What my strategy at one time was, the answer to the sister is, how many people are willing to stop and boycott Hajj for 1 year? Or how many people are willing to boycott for Umrah for at least 6 months? And let's see if the Saudis feel the pinch then.
Right.
It's because people like us, or people from the West rather than me, who want to go and live at these luxurious buildings. And the people who are tour operators are encouraging to live in these ugly tower skyscrapers with extortionate rates. The Saudis say, well, there is a demand and we will continue building. So that's where the damage is being also implemented.
Okay, so yes, because also we know that, I mean, I've heard people as well complaining about, as we talk about the limitation on numbers going. So obviously we've heard about people saying that this is unfair, that as many people as possible should be allowed to go. But it could be argued that if people were to moderate the number of times they go, for example, or, as you say, not stay in these luxury apartments, not provide the demand, basically. Is that one way? Or would you suggest actually a boycott 1 year?
Well, look, if you want to stop something demolished, you need a boycott. That will certainly take some effect.
Right.
The other strategy around controlling the crowd is crowd control. There have been plans that we've given to Saudi Arabia, we've given to the experts there who are at the top level of the government advising. But the reason why they're not listening to us on that level is because they make money on pilgrims. So the idea here is they want to accumulate wealth. And we are providing that wealth by living in Zamzam towers. And by the way, when you look at one Zamzam tower, they've got 123 towers springing up. And I showed these plans years ago, and you have the Zamzam clock tower standing now. Before it was not there, I was showing my plans. The point I'm arguing is that if you want to stop them to increase more pilgrims, and see if you can stand up for the boycott, and talk to your tour operators and say, well, sorry, if we're going to go to Hajj, we're going to perform Umrah, we don't want to stay here.
Yeah.
I'd rather go and stay in Azizia. Look, you're going up there for Hajj or Umrah.
Yeah.
That's sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's not about luxury and shopping and so forth. And if we don't stop, I'm afraid it's going to become worse than Las Vegas, and it's going to become like Manhattan. Already, it's the most expensive plot of land on earth.
Gosh, subhanAllah. So that is one practical point that can be made for when people are booking to go on Hajj. They need to book with a tour operator that is not going to encourage them or book them into these new luxury apartments.
Yes.
And they shouldn't. I remember actually as well getting an advert for one of these luxury apartments, and I actually did write back and complain. So I was saying this is just obscene. You know what you're doing. But of course, I got a sort of a very kind of smooth sort of reply, and trying to sort of encourage me to go and stay there. And actually, it's all right, everything's fine, But I mean, that's one good, again, practical step that people can take. It's quite a challenge, actually, as you say.
I think that's what the campaign is actually doing.
Yeah.
So this is the changes that people can bring about. We're using social media quite a lot because that's a popular way of debating and spreading the message. So these type of topics are being discussed at our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/SafeMuslimHeritage.
Yeah.
And these ideas, if someone can think of another idea, and boycott is the way, but it will get to that point once they realize that their actions can make a difference at an individual level, at their friend or group level, community level, and then that's at the awareness part. But to almost formulate all those responses, they have to go to their MP. And if you present these people facts and figures, especially like there's election time coming up, and you've got councillors, and you have these like ward meetings all the time. Letter is a way. We've got a template that you can use to do that. But based on all these discussions, because if you arrange a meeting, you say, for example, half an hour meeting, you have to have all these figures with you. Go to him and say, this is exactly what's happening. Show them some pictures as well. And then they do realize that. But what's required is that to be done on a mass level. And if two people or my family going or my area going, that's not going to work. And that's why we had it in London. We have it in the conference in Birmingham next time. Inshallah, we'll go a bit further north as well to do that. To raise awareness. And what the other thing we're doing is at events, at Muslim events, there are lots of like majlises and conferences happening both in Sunni and Shias. We go there with like a little stall and say, people come in, sign this petition. I mean, petitions work or not work, that we'll get to that point, but at least that's a way of doing it.
It's raising people's awareness.
Raising people's awareness, basically, to at all levels, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so and perhaps also, as you say, I mean, you talked about the difficulty of petitions, but perhaps people writing, just writing about, researching and writing about the issue. Like you said, you've had articles in the newspapers, so to go more into, again, to try and break into the mainstream.
Well, I think you see that the thing is that if you go back 20 years ago, nobody had seen anything like this. As you were aware, past 20 years I've been writing, and then this was recently come out when I had to actually open my mouth and say, well, look, enough is enough, now this has to stop. At this very stage, I'm actually thinking of organizing a big conference with photographs never seen by general public, photographs on display, like you would walk into a museum, a PowerPoint lecture with showing what is going on. But I feel that I'm being isolated by some politics of certain mosques who are not willing to host this event. I don't know, maybe they have their own different policies or whatever, Allahul Alam. But the point is that what is more important, the honor of the Prophet, or your heritage, or your own politics. And that's where we fall back each time, and we are failing Ummah in that way, I think.
Thank you very much, and sadly we have to wrap up. That was a very good discussion. Thank you both, and Barakallahu fikum. And thank you very much as well to our callers for calling in and raising some good points. And inshallah, we hope that each one of us can start to take some action about this and definitely rise above internal politics to actually save what is left of the holy sites. And inshallah, we'll see you again next week. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. That's good then. That was good.